Hello, everybody. Welcome to part 8 of our Heroes of the Faith series. Great to have you all with us. Please comment where you're watching from. I would love to engage with you there in the comments. It's been a pleasure and an honor to bring us through this series. We've traveled through time in a sense, looking at so many different characters. It has been a real pleasure. And actually, last week I asked from you all to submit who you wanted to see me cover this week. So it's time for the grand reveal. We had some great suggestions. People such as Daniel or Apostle John, Priscilla and Aquila, or even Job. And many others that came in, Mary, Ruth, Esther. They were all great suggestions. And I've taken some time and evaluated who we're going to talk about today. So I will give you some clues, some hints to see if you can guess who we will be talking about today. And you can post your answer in the comments. Today's hero was set out in a very interesting time frame. In many regards, this character we see is set up in a pre-law period. He is potentially in a Genesis patriarchal time. There's two theories over whether he really was a person or if he was not, whether he's more of a character created to display a message. There's this debate whether his story was written by Moses, and reflecting back to the the Genesis theory, or that he was written in the 4th to 7th BC, and it's much more Babylonian-esque style. This writing also has a lot to do with Babylonian literature, and we will talk more about that today. So get your thoughts going. Who do you think we'll be talking about? But while you think, I want to set some context. Imagine you live in the ancient Near East. You live thousands of years ago in the Middle East, and you don't know of a thing called gravity. You don't know of a thing called the many of the things that we know today of, like the Einstein's theory. You don't know any of these things. You live in a world which is pre-modern. Your understanding of the world is based upon everything around you. That you see yourself in the place of your society. And that all of the religion is based upon your interaction with the gods. So imagine that you believe, and this is this principle that defines the era. It is the principle of divine retribution. Basically being, if you do good, you bring sacrifices to the gods, you act well, the gods will bless you. And the equal is true. The opposite is true, is if you do bad, then bad will happen upon you. So that's this mindset you live in. You live in a world where your actions define how the gods will react with you. You do good, you do bad, that will base how things go for you. If there's a problem, you must have done bad. If you're good, then you've been good. If you got blessing, you've been good. And the gods kind of needed this engagement with you. They needed this interaction. And it's this whole element that you want rain, well, you sacrifice to the gods. You need a harvest, well, you sacrifice to the gods. There's this interaction between you and God. The other context is to think this story is written in the Ketuvim in the Old Testament. That's the writings. It's not the Torah. It's not the instructions. It's not the historical section, but it's the writing section with other writings and things that are like the Psalms and Proverbs. It's this section, it's writings. So it's good to know the genre that we're engaging with. And it's related texts being the Ecclesiastes, where the picture is everything is vanity. Vanity, vanity, everything is vanity. With this picture that life is meaningless. How do we find meaning in life? Or you have Proverbs, which talks about wisdom versus folly, death versus life, this search for what is wisdom. And we come to this context of today's character, Job. And Job is not a book designed to deal with why evil exists. It's not an apologetic response to evil. Rather, it is a book to deal with, we know evil exists, but how do we engage with it? Why? And this picture of we know it exists, how do we deal with it? How does it exist in this sense? And the book is there to kind of lay that, we deal with that question, but it's also to deal with this rule of divine retribution, where the mentality of the people was, if I do good, I get blessing, if I do bad, I get curses. This book is this wisdom literature to tackle saying God is the one who defines what is good and bad, and God is the one who blesses and curses. So we see this book and this theme actually elsewhere, in a sense that in Babylonian literature there is the Babylonian Job. And it's not to say that it was stolen. Just because there's correlation doesn't mean there's causation. Just because they both exist doesn't mean one stole it from the other. That's very flawed thinking. The good example would be, think today. The Belgian government has a law about wearing masks. The Netherlands law has a law about wearing masks. And if we, from 1,000 years from now, were to look back and say, look, they both had this law on masks, and, well, the Belgians must have copied the Dutch. Well, no, they didn't. They both put the law in to deal with a specific situation. And it's the same with this book. The book is not a copy. The book is not, he's not saying, oh, these Israelites, they stole again from the Babylonians. No. They both wrote a book to deal with this mentality that evil happens to good people. And the people wanted answers. The people needed to wrestle with that question. And so the Bible, as its point of revealing truth, talks about it, as did the other religions in their perspective of trying to portray truth. So it's good to know this context, that the book is there to deal with this idea of why does evil happen to good people. And that's why it's possible to say Job is a literary character. He's not a physical person, but he's a character created to help display the point. We see this elsewhere in Scripture, where characters are used as literary devices. So it's not that this is the only case, and this doesn't mean that the Bible is false. It's just this is the genre, this is the purpose of the book. So with that mindset, let's dive in. And we see there was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job. And that man was blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. So that's the beginning. That lays the very beginning of the book, the context. We engage with this man who is Job, who is righteous. He doesn't sin, he is upright, and he turns away from evil. He chooses loyalty, he chooses obedience. And this is then followed with the following. Now there was a day where the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came amongst them. And the Lord said to Satan, "From where have you come?" Satan answered the Lord, "From going to and fro on the earth, and walking up and down on it." And the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? And there is none like him on the earth, and a blameless and upright man, who fears God and turns away from evil." Then Satan answered the Lord, "Does Job fear God for no reason? Have you not put a hedge around him and on his house, and on that he has on every side? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will curse you to your face." And the Lord said to Satan, "Behold, all that he has is in your hand. Only against him do not stretch out your hand." So the Satan went out of the presence of the Lord. So now this is this interesting text where Job is righteous, and then we have the divine council. The sons of God meet with God, they have this discussion. And there's this Satan character. Now this is Ha-Satan. And in Hebrew, Ha is a prefix to denote that it is not the proper name. It is not Satan, it is the Satan. It is this like I say, you are the mum, or I am the pastor, or you are the viewer. That's this the defines a role. And it's this true in this story. The Satan, the adversary, the opponent. So within this divine council meeting, there is God, his sons, and with one of the roles of the sons is to be an opponent. to be a debater, someone who challenges in a correct way the things of God, in like a iron sharpening iron. He's thinking through, he's challenging the thought process to see if it's really true. It's this place of respect and honor where you can have a constructive conversation. And that's the job of this Satan. It's not this dualistic battle of God versus Satan, and God's got to submit to Satan because he's powerful. It's not this dualistic mentality. It is this divine council, family having a discussion about an idea. And the Satan belongs in this place because God says, "Where have you been?" So this is a place where he's giving a report. It's this discussion. It's not this evil, rebellious son of God who's sneaking in the back of a council meeting. No, he's meant to be there. But rather, when he's in that place, he oversteps his boundary of challenger, and that's where he becomes a rebellious Satan, and that's where the problems come. So rather, we follow this story of a Satan who is loyal to start with, but in his objections against the Lord, that's where he goes rogue. That's where he oversteps his boundaries. But God goes with him. We don't see that point, but rather God goes with this Satan. He says, "Send him off, go. Take all that he has. I accept your challenge." So he does, and he takes everything away. Job starts mourning. Job doesn't do what the Satan said he would do. He doesn't. And Job loses, and then he gets his health attacked. And then we see this come. Then his wife said to him, "Do you still hold fast your integrity? Curse God and die." That he said to her, "You speak as a foolish woman. You speak as one of the foolish women would speak. Shall we receive good from God? Shall we not receive evil?" In all of this, Job did not sin with his lips. So we see this element where Job is talking about this divine retribution. Should we receive good, but we also receive evil, God, from based upon our action? Same with the Satan. The Son is saying he gets blessing because he's been good, but if you take away that blessing, won't he be bad? It's this divine retribution rule being set out in the context. But it's also saying this character of Job. Even though Job may be a fictional character, we can still learn things from him. As James says, "But behold, we consider those blessed who remain steadfast. You have heard the steadfastness of Job, and you have seen the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful." And we see in James a different perspective. He's saying, look at the focus of this story. Story isn't about the divine, it's challenging the divine retribution, but what we can learn from it is steadfastness is what brings blessing. Not doing good, not this, okay, I've paid my tithe, or I've given you a sacrifice, or I prayed to you today, or I healed this person. That doesn't bring blessing. Rather, steadfastness, obedience. It's this covenant relationship which brings blessing. And so James shows this context of the new defining, but he also gives this element that we can learn. James calls us as believers to be steadfast in trial, just as Job was at the beginning. But as with all stories, it doesn't last. We see Job is steadfast even when his wife challenges him to tell him to curse God and die. And there's a contextual thing about this story where Job's wife could have a link to the Satan and things, but I'll let you go and dwell in that yourself. So the story continues. Job, eventually at the end, his friends arrive, they mourn with him 7 days, and after 7 days of mourning, he cracks. He reacts, and this is what he says. Is part of his, "Why did I not die at birth, come out of the womb and expire?" He knows he's innocent. He knows that divine retribution occurs. He is now challenging God in saying, "Why did you create me?" And he then goes on to say, there are the wicked cease from troubling, and they are weary, and there are the weary are at rest. There are prisoners at ease together, they hear not the voice of the taskmaster. The small and the great are there, and the slave is free from his master. It's this whole picture that Job is challenging God. Why did you create me only to make me suffer? And why are these evil people not getting the curse that they should be getting for being evil? So he's challenging God, going, are you not just? Do you not follow this rule of divine retribution? And Job, that's this picture that Job is painting. That's part of why the book is attacking this rule, because Job knows he's innocent. He knows the rule. He's attacking God. And that's where Job starts to sin or go against God, rebel a bit. And we know that he holds this because he says later too, remember, who that was innocent ever perished, or where were the upright cut off? As I have seen, those who plough iniquity and sow trouble reap the same. By the breath of God they perish, by the blast of the anger they are consumed. So Job is affirming this divine retribution. That's his problem. His missing link is not that God is not just, but the divine retribution is wrong. And that's what's being portrayed here in this scene. It's not that Job is this sinful man that's cursing God, oh, God should smite him. No, it's exposing within him this flawed thinking. That because I do good, God must bless me. Because I do bad, God must curse me. This must. That's the problem. And it's set out in this triangle, as I've been kind of showing, where you have God is just, Job is innocent, the rule of divine retribution. And each character within the story revolves around this triangle. And we see this as his three friends then jump in on the story. And we see that they say, Job, you must not be innocent. We know God is just. We know that there's divine retribution. So therefore, Job, you must not be innocent. And that's the second side of the picture. So you have Job attacking God, his friends attacking him, and you cycle. They cycle. They attack him, he defends. The next one attacks him, he defends. And they go through each character 3 times. For a purpose. Because it's a literary device. The book is set up with a purpose, with a theme, with a structure. This is designed as a literary device. This is how we get this evidence that Job is more than just a potential character. We allows him to be fiction because we see him being used in such a way. Not to say that he has to be. And then we come, after these 3 cycles of conversation, then we come to an interlude. Now, why would you have an interlude in a story? Well, to lay a point. And we read, in this interlude, Job says, God understands the way to it. He knows its place. For he looks to the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. And when he gave wind its weight and appointed the water by measure, when he made the decree for rain and a way for the thunder, the lightning of the thunder, when he saw it and declared it, he established it and searched it out. And he said to man, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. And turn away from evil is understanding. And you see this saying is this interlude, is Job interjecting to the reader, saying, this is the focus. This is the point of the book. This element where difficulties happen, but God is the one over it all. God is the one who has wisdom. Fear of the Lord, that is wisdom. Turning from evil is understanding. Job gives us this insight to as believers. How do we have wisdom? We fear God. We know him for who he is as the sovereign creator over everything. And our understanding is knowing what's right, knowing what's wrong, and turning away from what's wrong to do what is right. That's this picture being painted in the book. And it kind of ties in with the other books. If you've ever read Proverbs or Ecclesiastes, this whole book is about what is wisdom. The wisdom is the fear of the Lord. Folly in death is about following your own rights, whereas wisdom is doing the things that following God's statutes. It's this whole mentality of wisdom literature which points to fear of the Lord is wisdom. Doing what God says is wisdom. Obeying his commands is wisdom. Doing your own thing, harlotry, these silly things that we tend to do. There are choices, there are wisdom, they are folly, they are death. And that's part of the theme of the story of Job. He is laying down this principle. Even though he doesn't get it, and he has this flawed thinking, he still lays down the core principle of knowing, as an upright man of God, I need to fear him as my creator, and I need to trust his ways, and I know that what he says is right is understanding. It is truth. And so we have this, and then after this, we kind of reach the second phase of the story. And this fourth character comes in, Elihu. And Elihu is this other thing, he's younger, and he says to them, wait, this is a different test. He says, therefore hear me. And this is, what is this? This is God. We've gone too far. And Elihu says in Job 34, therefore hear me, you men of understanding. Far be it from God that he should do wickedness, and far from the Almighty that he should do wrong. For according to the works of man he will repay, and according to his ways he will make him befall. So this Elihu character, he comes in after this interlude, and he starts saying to these guys, open your eyes. He starts on God is just. God is right. God will not do wickedness. God will not punish someone when they don't deserve it. But at the same time, and so he still has this divine retribution element in there, but it's different because he's starting from this place of God knows man's acts, and rather than being bound to the acts, he will repay the works based upon his choice. According to the ways he will make it befall. It's not that when I do good, God has to bless me. That's the divine retribution rule. Whereas Elihu is saying, God chooses who he blesses and why, and who he curses and why. It's this shift. He is from the God is just corner, and he's attacking the other two and saying, maybe Job's not innocent, but also the divine retribution rule is not true. And this is also followed by God's response. And he says, who is this, Job, that darkens the counsel by words without knowledge? Dress for action like a man. I will question you, and you will make it known to me. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determines its measures? Surely you will know. Or who stretched out the line upon it? Or where its base is sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone? And when the morning stars sung together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Now we have this again, this divine council, beginning of creation picture. The sons of God were there, the divine beings were already created, and the morning stars, those who witnessed creation, sung for joy. But God is laying down his authority as a response to Job's question. And the whole point is to say, look, evil occurs, but look to me as the creator. I am the one who has the authority. I created everything. I stand here and I made the stars. I made you. I laid the earth's foundations. And remember, God is picturing and explaining things as the foundation of the earth through a way that Job could understand. Of course, we don't believe that the earth had a concrete foundation or an earth foundation, but it's a metaphor to describe how the earth was formed. Were you there when the core came together? In our scientific understanding, when the inner core was started to heat up and the layers with gravity pulled the pieces together, like this kind of picture. He's like, were you there when this happened? And to Job, it was when the foundations were laid. So it's this metaphor to speak to Job in his day and age. But he's saying, were you there? Do you have this understanding? God is not lowering himself to Job's standard. He's not there to create an apologetic response to evil. He's going, yes, this evil occurs. But are you me? Do you have this understanding? You tell me about how I created all of this and how I did all of these things. And if you want to challenge my judgment, well, challenge it all. Challenge my creation. Challenge, do better. Is this kind of this layer of, are you God? And the point is this response of God is, we are not God. We are created beings. And we need to accept that when evil occurs, we need to trust in him. And as he says, where he talks, tell me if you have understanding. We know earlier that understanding is turning away from evil. It's this thing, do you know what's right and wrong? Do you know how things should go? And it's this picture being painted for us as we, as obedient believers, we need to trust God that this is happening for a reason, that there is a purpose behind, in a sense, that it's not to say every evil that happens in a sense that God has ordained it. No, God does not bring wickedness. But there is this space where he has allowed it in this age, and he uses it for his good. And we see this pictured in metaphor, where he says, behold, behemoth, which I made as I made you. He eats grass like an ox. Behold his strength in his loins, and his power in the muscles of his belly. The behemoth is this land animal, this land beast, which also has this picture of chaos. And then you have the equivalent in the, can you draw out the Leviathan with a fish hook, and press down its tongue with a cord? Can you put a rope in its nose, or pierce its jaw with a hook? The behemoth, the Leviathan, is the sea creature, which is also pictured for chaos. And what we see here is God is saying, in the sense, I created these beings. The behemoth and the Leviathan have a purpose. And within God's picture, within God's method, within God's working, they have a place of beauty. Look at this beautiful behemoth that I created, like I created you, humans. I created the Leviathan. I created these beings, and they have a place and a purpose within my creation. The problem is that purpose got twisted by the rebellion, by the disobedience. And these creatures, which are covered and in creation, when God hovered over the spirit of the water, they were ordered. But the man's rebellion and chaos turned these beautiful creatures into things of destruction. The Leviathan, of this thing in the sea that would eat us up if we went out. The behemoth, this terror. That's the picture we have of them, because they are through the lens of chaos. But God views them through the lens of order, through the lens of purpose. And he will utilize these beasts for purpose. And that's a thing for us to remember, is when these beasts are used for chaos, yes, there's destruction and we should fear them. But ultimately God created them. He's the one who took the Leviathan. He put it under his control. He fished it in. He is the one who is over the chaos. Yes, he allows it in this day and age. But it doesn't mean he's not got control over it. It's not to say he ordains it. It's not to say that he is behind it. It's not that God is this evil God. But rather, in this age, for this creation, God allows evil, and he will use it when the enemy rebels, when we rebel, when other people rebel. He will work with it for his good, and he can redeem it because he created the things that rebelled. He created them with an order. He created them with a purpose. And that is this focus of Job, is this book of order, is this focus of, it is not that our actions equal a result. It's not that when I do good, I give food to the homeless, God will bless me. It's not that when I kick a homeless man, God's going to curse me. But rather, God, at the end of time, will hold each and every one of us, both humans and spiritual powers, to account for our actions. And he will repay us for the deeds, in a sense of he will evaluate each and everything. And he will decide, okay, will you partake in the future project? Will you partake in the new creation? Will you join me and my son in a place of loyalty, of covenant in the new age? Or will you be a place of rebellion and therefore not be part of the new thing to come? And that's this point, this hope, this focus we have as believers. Evil will come. That's a reality. But we can trust in God and hope in Him and know that we will be redeemed from it. It will be used for good of His kingdom. And ultimately, all that do evil will be held to account. We don't need to hold them to account. We can point to fellow brethren and brothers when they do wrong. We say, hey, come, repent, turn back, come into relationship again. But we can't judge. That's God's job. God's job is to hold everyone to account for the good and the evil. And we believe in Jesus that all will be forgiven. That all that we repent of, all that we turn away from, Jesus forgives and His blood covers. And I think that is the story that we can learn from Job. We are called to be steadfast in trial, trusting in God through difficulty, and know at the end He will restore all things for good, just as He did with Job. The last chapters of Job is where He gives him a new wife, new kids, new family, new creation. You see this picture, the beginning, things were perfect. Things go into chaos. There's discussion, there's debate, there's this problem, and then God speaks. God acts. And then there's something new. And I think it's almost like Job is like a mini testimony to the creation order. And it's a hope that we know, like Job, in the new heavens, we will have a new creation to work with. One without evil, one without sin. And we can be encouraged and hopeful for the things to come. And so as we round off this series, I think it's good to see this, that Job, this is why I chose Job. It fits in with the theme. From Abel and Cain, do we choose the fruit of right? Do we choose to take the fruit for our own? And the picture of Noah is, do we trust God even though we can't see? Or with Abraham, are we willing to lay things down, our securities, our safety nets, and trust Him where He leads us? Or with David, is our heart after his things? Do we come under Him as God? Do we come under Him and His things and His ways and seek for His kingdom? And or Elijah, are we the mouthpiece of God to the world? Do we stand in obedience? Do we stand in this place of trusting and speaking the things of God into existence? And are we expectant for the things of God to pass? And I believe this is this encouragement of this series, that we can look at these heroes of faith. They are all human. Job, he cracked. Elijah, he was almost bipolar in his ups and downs. David, he was wrong. Jacob was a liar. Abraham was a cheat, in a sense of a scared, fearful man. Abel was righteous, but his brother had a temper and was jealous. And each character we've covered, we've seen the good and we've seen the bad. And the bad is not for us to point fingers, but it's a place to learn. It's a place to grow. And I believe for us too, when we make mistakes, it's a place to grow in. When evil comes, it's a place to grow. It's a place to trust. It's a place to develop. And we shouldn't see evil as this, I've done something wrong. Just because evil happens to us, it doesn't mean we've done wrong. And just because blessing comes to us, it doesn't mean we've just done right. The response from God is not defined by our actions. It's defined by His choice. And we need to come under Him as our King and trust His choices. So, thank you for joining us. Thank you for following this series with me. Please feel free to go back and watch the series if you've missed any. I believe it's a great series, and hopefully you've been encouraged by it. And if you're not part of Lighthouse, please feel free to share it. If you're part of Lighthouse too, feel free to share this as a resource for the kingdom. Obviously, respect the copyright that this is from me, from Lighthouse. But you feel free to use this, share this, work with it, whatever. I really want to be this as an opportunity of things that we can grow and learn from together. And also to say it's an exciting time for the kingdom of God. This Sunday, Lighthouse comes together as a church in the theatre. The tickets are nearly sold out, so if you want one, please get them. You can also check out our website at the reopening page and sign up for all of our Sundays in September. And we'd love to see you there. We'd love to engage with you. And also to know that life groups are starting soon. September the 13th, life groups are on the horizon where the ideas need to be coming. So if you have an idea of a life group, please send them in. Not to me. You'll hear more about that on Sunday. But please, we'd love to see you and we'd love to do church with you as well. Thanks for watching and God bless.